Magandang gabi po uli sa inyong lahat. Normal naman ho siguro, kinakabahan ako. Hindi lang ho kinakabahan. I really wish to thank the family. You have suffered a lot. The whole family. And you have given so much to our country. And now it is Noynoy. From Noynoy to Tita Cory and Benigno, Simeon, Aquino. Hindi ako Atenista. Jesuit lang po. So hindi ako pinalad na maging ka-classmate ni Pinoy. But I have some few precious encounters with Pinoy. One is in Zamboanga when I invited him to be our guest of honor in the conference, School Serving Society. And people told me, no, you cannot invite him. But I did, and he came. Then, very importantly, we were together during the Zamboanga siege. It was a very difficult time. I thought I would not see war. Akala ko, ligtas na ako sa gera. Pero, andoon siya. And it was difficult. It was a difficult time. But I don't know why, but he spent more than 2 hours talking to me, one-on-one, during that troubled period. And then the last time, we were in Malacanang. I brought some leaders of the Lumad, and he really stretched his time. Instead of 1 hour, he gave 3 hours to listen to the tribal leaders that I brought from Mindanao. And I could sense the sincerity of listening to ordinary people. And the last time I saw him was in University of the Philippines during our Mass for the 1,000th day of detention of Senator Laila de Lima. 1,000th day, and that was last year. And the other Sunday, I said Mass with Laila, the 2 of us. Kaming dalawa lang po, dyan sa loob ng Camp Crame. And I think Laila de Lima is a symbol of the present administration's way of treating all of us. And Pinoy went to that Mass with sincerity. We knew he was already thin, he was sick, but he went there. And I was really touched by that. Now, but I have a very personal souvenir from him. When I wrote this book, Ehemplo, from Ehem, I had his signature here, Noynoy. Bakit to ako nakakuha ng signature? Hindi dahil sa malakas ako, kundi dahil kay Sister Agnes. Sister Agnes, siya yung kanyang spiritual directress. And through Sister Agnes, I got to know that Pinoy had many questions about God. He had questions about faith. And he had problems with the church and with priests like me. And probably even with Jesuits, sa alumni. May problema siya. Malalim yung pagtatanong niya sa Diyos at sa simbahan. At kung minsan, hindi nga siya nagkukomunyon, yung pagkakaintindi ko. But I knew very well that deep within his heart, there was a child that believed. And the fact that he would always visit Sister Agnes, whether in Zamboanga or at the airport here, I knew, I could feel that Pinoy was in contact with his God. He had problems with his faith, and yet he went practicing the faith. That's why I can say tonight that Pinoy's death, Pinoy, your death has a special message for all of us. This death comes in the wake of a new political era. And let me go back to this book. I quoted him in the frontispiece. Ano yung kinote ko sa kanya? Sinulat niya, ang ating pangunahing tungkulin ay ang magsikap na maiangat ang bansa mula sa kahirapan sa pamamagitan ng tapat at mahusay na pamamalakad sa bansa. Tapat at mahusay na pamamalakad sa bansa. Ang unang hakbang ay ang pagkakaroon ng tuwid at tapat na hanay ng mga pinuno. Kailangan daw meron talaga tayong mga pinuno na i-elect natin. At sabi niya, magsisimula ito sa akin. Sisikapin kong maging isang mabuting ehemplo. Tugman-tugma doon po sa libro ko. Hinding-hindi ko sasayangin ang tiwalang ipinagkaloob ninyo sa akin. At sisiguruduhin ko na ganito rin ang adikain ng aking mga cabinet members. Ayun. Tamang-tama pa po, ano? Sabi niya, kailangan ng tapat at mahusay na pamumuno at magsisimula ito sa akin, hindi ako magnanakaw, hindi ako mambabastos, hindi ako maninira ng ating kulturang pinagyayaman ng ating bansa. Hindi ako magiging kriminal. Hindi ko dudungisan ng dugo ang aking mga kamay. At magsisimula ang tapat at mahusay na pamamalakad na ito sa akin. At titiyakin ko na ang aking gabinete, ang aking mga aalalay sa akin ay gayon din ang gagawin. Siyempre, mahirap din yun. At wala namang perpekto dito. Ang sabi niya, the first step is to have leaders who are ethical, honest, and true public servants. And I will set the ejemplo, the example. I believe that the service of President Pinoy is a good ejemplo, it's a good exemplar for what Pope Francis calls a better kind of politics. Pope Francis says, next slide, once more, I appeal for a renewed appreciation of politics as a lofty vocation and one of the highest forms of charity, inasmuch as it seeks the common good. There is a new encyclical, less than 1 year old, and it's called Fratelli Tutti. We should all read that. And the Pope is saying, take note, politics is a lofty vocation. For some of us, for all of us, there is a place where we could be holy. And that is a place to be holy. Let's go back to the story of the Good Samaritan, because Pope Francis in chapter 2 of that encyclical dwells on the Good Samaritan story. We know the story, but let me ask you, how many Good Samaritans are there in that story? Maybe from childhood, your answer is one. The one who personally helped the wounded. But the Pope has more wisdom than that. There is the Good Samaritan individual who really approached the wounded, the victim, probably of Tokhang. But there is also, next one. There is also the Good Samaritan innkeeper. Tama ba yun? Kasi sa totoo lang ho, nung dinampot nung Good Samaritan individual yung biktima ng mga tulisan, hindi naman siya ang nag-frontliner doon. Nagbigay lang siya ng first aid, tapos dinala na niya sa inn at sinalubong siya ng innkeeper na nagmamanage ng inn, ng institution. So there is the Good Samaritan individual, the Good Samaritan innkeeper, and the Good Samaritan institution. And this is where the wisdom of Pope Francis begins. And I'd like to share with you because I think the life of service, political love of service of Pinoy is remarkably appreciated here. Take note, aside from the Good Samaritan individual, there is the good innkeeper. The good innkeeper demonstrates, according to the Pope, a radical hospitality to the victim, probably even more than what has been demonstrated by the Samaritan individual, because he was paid only 2 denarii, very cheap, and he had to accommodate a victim of violence. For all you know, the criminals are just around the corner, ready to attack the inn. Marami sa atin takot tumanggap ng biktima kasi baka tayo ma-red tag, baka tayo madamay. Ngayon, meron siyang sinasabi rin dito na sabi ng Pope, mahaba po ito pero pinapaiksi ko na lang. Sabi niya, take note, the two guys who saw the victim ahead of the Good Samaritan individual were both religious. So the first one was a Jesuit. Naglalakad. Nakita niya yung biktima. Sabi niya, sorry, may talk pa ako. Yung Levite, yung sumunod, sabi, sorry, a-attend pa ako sa talk ni Father. Lahat umiwas. Lumingon. Tumingin sa kabila. Umiwas. Umilag. Naghugas kamay. Sabi niya, ayoko nang tumingin sa TV. Ayoko nang manood ng mga balita kasi naguguluhan lang ako. Yung mga marami tayong klaseng pag-iwas sa gulo. Sabi ni Pope, religiosity is not a guarantee that we are living a life as demanded by the gospel. It shows that belief in God or piousness, piety, and the worship of God are not enough to ensure that we are actually living in the way pleasing to God. He added, a believer may be untrue to everything that his faith demands of him, and yet he is close to God and better than others. When I read this, I appreciated Pinoy. He had some questions about faith, about God, about the church. And yet, he was doing God's will. Paradoxically, those who claim to be unbelievers can sometimes put God's will into practice better than believers. Now, there is another temptation or alibi. The problem is so complex, they would say. Who am I to be able to do anything? Sabi niya, masyadong magulo, masyadong mahirap, masyadong komplikado ang mundo. Sino ba naman ako para makapag-contribute? This disillusionment and despair is already a product of dictators. When you feel desperate, when you feel disempowered, then, according to chapter 1, that of the Fratelli Tutti, that itself is already a product of the machinations of the dictators. Such is the agenda of the invisible dictatorship of hidden interests that have gained mastery. And para tayong kinukulam ng pakiramdam natin, wala naman tayong magagawa yun ang gusto yun ang namamayani So sabi ni Pope, no, we should not stop there. We must expand our love Let us not do this alone as Good Samaritan individuals. The Samaritan discovered the innkeeper who would care for the man. We too are called to unite as a family that is stronger than the sum of small individual humanitarian members. Let us stop feeling sorry for ourselves and acknowledge our crimes, our apathy, our lies. And, the example of Pinoy gives me hope. I hope we will produce more Pinoys. Sana yung mga pwede diyang umupo, mag-manage, tumakbo na. And chapter 5 of this Fratelli Tutti is entitled, Better Kind of Politics. Iba yung uri ng politika. And don't forget this important phrase that Pope Francis is introducing. What is that? He is introducing the word political love. You have heard of corporal works of mercy. You have heard of spiritual works of mercy. We must now cultivate the political works of mercy, political charity, a love that is not just one-on-one, a love that is not just affective, but effective in society. The Pope says, while individuals can help others in need, when they join together in initiating a social process, a social movement of fraternity and justice for all, they enter the field of charity at its most vast, namely political love. This entails working for a social and political order whose soul is social charity. Next, political love builds structures and institutions of justice. It does not destroy the Congress. Political love does not destroy the judiciary. It does not destroy institutions like the police or the military or the media. Political love is an equally indispensable act of love to strive to organize and not just agonize and structure society so that one's neighbor will not find himself in poverty. And this requires changing the social conditions that caused his or her suffering. I remember Dom Helder Camera saying, when I feed the poor, they call me saint. But when I ask, why in the first place are they poor, they call me communist. Now, political charity is charity, but it is more than humanitarian work. It refers to government leaders. According to Pope Francis, government leaders must be the first ones to sacrifice. Sabi dito, political charity is also expressed in a spirit of openness to everyone. And government leaders should be the first ones to make the sacrifices that foster encounter and to seek convergence on at least some issues. They should be ready to listen to other points of view and to make room for everyone, including critics. I feel very sorry for Laila de Lima and many others. Ilan na yung mga pinatay dahil nagsasalita. But this kind of politics does not make us grim and determined and violent as the dictators. Sabi niya, politics and tender love. The politician, those who are engaged in politics, activism, should be both strong and tender, should be kind as well. And that's why Pope Francis next says politics is a lofty vocation. Sinasabi ko dun sa mga kabataan, those who can must enter politics because politics is ethics applied to the wider good. Sabi niya ni Pope Francis. I appeal for a renewed appreciation of politics as a lofty vocation, as one of the highest forms of charity, inasmuch as it seeks the common good. There is nobility in the life of politicians. Hindi ko yata narinig to sa mga katisismo. Sabi niya, helping an elderly person cross a river is charity. But the politician building a bridge, that too is charity. While one person can help another by providing something to eat, the politician creates a job for that other person and thus practices a lofty form of charity that ennobles his or her political activity. And so, sabi ko kanina, there must be a message to this death of Pinoy. And what could be that message? Please enter into politics in our own ways. We cannot and must not say, wala akong pakialam sa politika, wala akong pakialam sa eleksyon, wala akong pakialam sa gobyerno. Hindi po pwede yun. Pababayaan lang ba natin ang katulad ni Pinoy na siya lang magkukumahog doon? What about the budget? What about the health? What about the medicine? What about the vaccine? All these things rely on good governance. And therefore, it is our duty as Christians to intervene in the proper political restructuring and transformation of society. And so maybe we can call wanted a new batch of good politicians like Pinoy. Yung iba siguro sa inyo kinakabahan, Lord, pinapakandidato mo ba ako? Baka marinig mo, oo, sige na. Tutulong ba ako? Oo, sige na. In your own way. Gawa ka ng TikTok, gawa ka ng email, etc. But the point is, we have to put in good people in politics because politics is ethics applied to the wider good. Today, we need a new batch of leaders like Pinoy, who would go into politics with integrity and competence. Filipinos who would reclaim politics as a lofty vocation, despite their own personal weaknesses and doubts, but would serve the country, especially the marginalized. Filipinos who would build up institutions of justice and productivity, who would serve with the virtue of political love. And finally, Pinoy, you are resting, but like St. Paul in the first reading, you can say, I am already being poured out as a libation, and the time of my departure has come. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. From now on, there is reserved for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will give me on that day, and not only to me, but also to all who have longed for his appearing. Pinoy, God bless you. You're in good hands. Please whisper to potential candidates, do your share. Potential good voters and organizers, it's your turn. Let us now pause for a while. And thank you, Lord, for the gift of persons, the gift of good politicians in the Senate, in Congress, in the cabinet posts, in foreign diplomatic offices, in the security areas. God bless them. And God bless your people in this troubled time. Amen.